Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. And I don't think I can blame the system. I'll have to blame the operator. Welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. I invite everyone to stand and join Council in singing O Canada. Thank you. Please be seated. I will now give our opening prayer, followed by our moment of silent reflection, and then the meeting proper will begin. God grant us understanding and patience that justice, truth, and honesty may be evident in our decisions. Make us mindful of the needs of the people throughout the town of Oakville. Help us govern with the wider community in mind, and so create in us a desire for progress and responsible action. We ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Council, do you have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you. How do you wish to deal with the minutes of your previous council meetings? Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Johnston, indicating approval of the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? They are carried. We have no public presentations listed for this agenda, but we do have a number of delegations concerning items on the agenda. Madam Clerk, would you call the delegations, please?
The first delegation is Jeff McKay of Ellis Dawn regarding the noise exemption appeal, the New Oakville Hospital 3000 third line, which was item 6 of the Administrative Services Committee agenda.
Mr. McKay, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Council. At the meeting we attended last Tuesday, it appears that the motion was passed that we could have some relief from the bylaw from 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. at night. So we're hoping that that's okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, how's that? At the meeting I attended last Tuesday, we asked for a relief from the bylaw from 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. at night for the New Oakville Hospital for making deliveries to the hospital, not for doing construction work. And at that meeting, there was a gentleman who had objected, and I offered to meet with him, and I offered as well with council members if there were any meetings with the local residents that were having any issues with noise. I was more than happy to meet with them and discuss any problems we might be having as neighbors. I haven't heard from anybody since then, so I'm hoping that everything's been going fine for everybody. And we would just like to continue to move along on that basis if we could, please.
All right, thank you very much for your information. Councillor Elgar has a question for you.
Certainly.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming tonight. Just wondering, if you had young children, how would you feel about having the noise bylaw from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. in the evening if you were close to a construction site of that magnitude?
I have had young children, and I have had construction sites working around, and I understand that that has to be done. We are trying to keep the noise down to a very low level. I did ask if there was a decibel level, for example, that we were exceeding that would in fact be in contravention of the bylaw, and I was informed that there is no such decibel level. We're simply moving equipment in and out of the project deliveries. It's no different than the noise on Dundas. We took noise levels on the south side of Dundas Street and found that in fact the decibel level is higher on the south side of Dundas than it is on our side.
So in that case, you shouldn't have any complaints even if we go 7 to 7, because what you're saying, the residents won't hear any noise since you've already got a noise that's higher on Dundas?
I think it's very difficult for the residents in some respects to discern where that noise is coming from. The noise on Dundas is fairly substantial. It is a major highway. And the people that were having issues were in fact a block or so behind the existing townhomes that are facing on Dundas. And there was work at the time when they were having issues, and I haven't heard any since. There was work going on Dundas Street with sewer work and things like that. So I'm really not sure how they really knew it was us anyway, to be perfectly honest.
So basically then you'd be okay if we went from the 7 a.m. to the 7 p.m. noise bylaw time, and then we can deal with issues if they do come up, I would hope. Instead of reversing to a 7 to 10 p.m., which is an exception, which if we do it there, we should do it everywhere in Oakville. Would you agree?
I don't know if that's the councillor's policies with that sort of thing. This is an exceptional project. It is normal industry standard to deliver before and after working hours. We want to be good neighbors, and we are going to be there for 25 years maintaining this hospital, so it's not like we're here and gone. So we do want to be good neighbors. I'm happy to help with those neighbors if they're having issues and deal with them on an individual basis. I have no problem with that whatsoever. It's entirely up to you.
If we revert back to the regular bylaw that everybody else in the town abides by, you would be okay with that?
We do need to make these deliveries after 7 p.m. at night.
I don't have a problem with you making any deliveries as long as nobody complains about hearing them. Same as anything else. But we have had cases where it has gone to the OMB, and we have won the OMB cases on deliveries. There was Ward 3, we had a case. There's issues with deliveries to grocery stores, which after a number of fines, people woke up, and I would hope that you would be respectful the same as everyone else if we revert back to the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. timing.
We would absolutely respect that. I have absolutely no concern with that whatsoever. We wanted to make sure we were good neighbors and we were trying to follow the rules, so that's why we made the application, so that we wouldn't have to keep coming back and forth to you every once in a while.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Khan?
Thank you very much for your comments. You said that you're more than willing to meet with individuals if they have concerns. Is there a number that people can call? Because other than just calling the council or staff, have you set up a number or an email where people can complain directly to you if these issues do arise?
I have given out my business card, my contact information. I'm happy to provide that to any of the councillors. We don't have a website, for example, that has my home phone number on it or anything like that, but if anyone does have an issue, I'm more than happy to speak to them. They can call Ellis Don directly, they can call the site office, they can come to the site office and see me, or I'm happy to give any of you my cards and access to emails and phone.
I think we'd want them to be calling you directly instead of us getting hit with all sorts of noise complaints. Thank you.
And that's fine, I'm happy to deal with those.
Any others? Councillor Demoff?
I heard part of your presentation at ASC. Is there a reason you need an exemption from the bylaw in order to receive deliveries between 7 and 10? You indicated you wouldn't be using backup beepers because you've got a turnaround. So what kind of noise are you generating other than a truck coming in to deliver that you need an exemption from the noise bylaw?
We were under the impression, rightly or wrongly, that anything we did after 7 p.m. that was either construction activity or could be considered noise, i.e. deliveries, could possibly need some relief from the bylaw. If that isn't in fact the case, then that's fine, and we're happy to deal with it on an individual basis. I don't know how the individuals do complain, and if they do, how that works, so we wanted to mitigate some of these phone calls.
So maybe staff could clarify if they can receive deliveries outside of the noise bylaw or outside of the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.? Because I'm a little confused. If they can take deliveries on the site, why do they need an exemption?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if they do not make any noise, they can carry on 24 hours a day. But if they make noise outside of that threshold of 7 till 7, then they're in breach of the bylaw.
So they're not having backup beepers, so what kind of noise? So a truck driving in is okay?
Well, as Mr. McKay pointed out last week, oftentimes you'll find that when trucks are congregating, one trucker sees another and pulls the horn. That sort of thing is enough to, you know, if it starts spreading, and it draws attention to the loading.
That's why I asked if there was a threshold, or how do you determine what noise is, so I could make sure we were under that, and there is no measurement. We thought if in fact there were deliveries happening after 7 p.m., that may be construed as noise, and that's why we came to you.
So are you telling council that you want an exemption from the noise bylaw so that in the dark of night, your truckers can toot their horns at each other?
That's not it at all, Mayor, no. We do want to accept deliveries. We do have cranes that offload that equipment, but they are electric cranes. We don't have a generator. We're not creating noise by doing that. We're not having construction activity ongoing. They're not banging hammers, or we're not excavating, materials, that sort of thing.
Okay, so you heard the staff's explanation of how it works. And Councillor, thank you for bringing that out. I hope that actually assists everyone. Any other questions? Mr. McKay, thank you very much for your information.
Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation is Scott Fleming regarding the implementation of active transportation facilities along River Oaks Boulevard, which was item 3 of the Community Services Committee meeting.
Council looks forward to your information.
Thanks very much. Appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to be very brief because there are a couple others that are going to have a little more specifics. My information is based on the premise that I am a resident of River Oaks Boulevard East. I am also an avid cyclist. I do ride my bicycle 25 to 30 kilometers per day and use River Oaks Boulevard East on a daily basis. When the bike lanes we've always had were changed to no parking, it inconvenienced the residents in that we're no longer available to park on our street, inconveniencing our other neighbors on adjacent streets that we now occupy their parking as well. And one of the comments, or a couple of comments that we had heard as to why it had been done, was for the safety of the cyclist. And when I ride, and I've brought pictures, I apologize for not doing something a little more spectacular on your screen, but just from a riding perspective, there are designated bike lanes that are bike lanes that are as unsafe as any road, because you still have to get around whatever the obstacles are. Here it's closed because of construction and work. We have cyclists and opposing traffic coming towards me when I ride, so I have to...
Mr. Fleming?
Yes, I'm sorry.
There's actually a document board there.
Oh, awesome.
And if you put your pictures there one at a time, that's right.
Awesome.
Then council can see them on their monitors, and the public can, I think, see them up there. There you go.
Fantastic.
Now you're talking to everybody.
Fantastic. I like that a lot. Thank you. So you can see that where there are designated bicycle lanes, as we now have, that no parking is allowed. The comments that we had heard before was that it was unsafe for cyclists, as you have to leave your lane your dedicated lane to get around whatever the obstacle was. So the way we've always had it with the parked cars, is actually safe as anything, as it keeps the traffic calm, the speeds down. Here, I mean, you can go through a whole bunch of different scenarios where the lanes are dedicated bicycle lanes, again, opposing traffic, kids coming to school as I'm going the other way. The one thing with cars is I know cars are going to go straight. When you've got children on skateboards and bicycles, I have no idea where they're going to go. I don't know if they're coming at me. I don't know if I have to hop a curb, go on the lane, stop. I don't know. A little more erratic behavior. So just some examples there. And as far as the lines, the painted lines, I mean, one thing I do know for sure is that no one's going to cross into a parked vehicle and take me out. But with the painted line, it could be any painted line, doesn't guarantee safety. So there is certainly an element of danger regardless of what the bike lane facilities are. I love the bike lanes. I think they're good for the most part. I still think there is a lot of onus on the riders to make sure that they're safe. One of the two most common ways that I've come close to being in accidents recently, this one is appropriate, in an intersection where the bike lanes actually come to an end on River Oaks Boulevard, the new lanes. They don't go to the intersection, so they kind of don't protect me there anyway. And then when I get to the end of the street, there are no bike lanes to pick up. River Oaks Boulevard East at Trafalgar Road, it stops at Mount, and then I've got the great big church, and then the bike lanes stop. So once I'm there, where's my safety there? So it doesn't really, there's no continuity to it. So, for the 1.2 kilometers of no parking that we've incurred, there are very few cyclists that use our street. So we've lost parking 24/7, 365 days a year for the odd cyclist who comes by, who can still ride equally safe on the lanes that exist today and have existed for a number of years. So that's, doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think if we go back to the way we had it before, where we had restricted parking during early morning and the morning and afternoon rush hour, I think everybody can win that way, and I just don't think we need to go as far as it's totally no parking.
Thank you for your information. Councillor Demoff has a question.
My question is just, is your issue with the parking or with the speeding on your street?
My issue is with both. But I've always had parking. I no longer have parking. I've always had speeders. I still have speeders. So we've lost parking, and our neighbors have picked up all of our vehicles now that are in front of their homes, and they've lost parking too subsequently.
So it's more the lack of parking and not the speeding on the street then?
Well, it's still both. It's both equally. Yeah.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
clearing that up. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Is Bruce Williams, again regarding the implementation of the active transportation facilities on River Oaks Boulevard East, item 3 of Community Services.
Welcome, Mr. Williams. Council looks forward to your information.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. My name is Bruce Williams. I'm a resident of River Oaks Boulevard East, have been since brand new, 24 years. I know we're trying to consolidate a little bit of what we did last week, so I'm going to try to keep it, give you a little bit of history on the road. River Oaks Boulevard East has had a horrific experience of speeding for 24 years. Back in the early 90s, we fought with bureaucrats in the council to get stop signs, because at that stage, from Oakmead to Trafalgar, there was no stop sign at all. We were refused at every bend until the previous mayor, Mulvale, came, saw that there was a serious problem, cut through the red tape, and put in a stop sign at Oak Springs. It was not the perfect result, but at least it helped. But from that day on, we have had nothing. We have 2 children's parks, one at Peely, one at Castlefield, and no crosswalk to get into the park. We have had the police involved, where they actually sat on driveways, and some people were clocked in excess of 95 kilometers an hour in a 50 zone. At any time in the last 23 years, we have had no less than 35 children under the age of 10. Now, I know that some councillors are concerned that we should try to fix this problem. We have not been able to fix the problem in 23 years. The police have given up and gone away. We had a letter back in June that said we were going to restrict parking and put in bicycle lanes. Almost within a week and a half, there was a truck there grinding out a brand new road that had just been laid 6 months earlier at great cost to grind out the bicycle route lanes and put in a bicycle lane 2 inches further out. Put in the emblems. To us as residents, it made no sense whatsoever. And it was all under the guise of traffic calming, passive traffic calming. I did a little bit of research on traffic calming because I was involved in some of it back in 1968, believe it or not, in Great Britain. That's where it started. It's not a new concept. And there are 4 main fundamentals that are required in traffic calming. The first one is education, which we've had none. 24 years, been none from the town. We've had some police involvement, but none for the last 23 years at least. And the third one is well-marked, visible pedestrian crossings. We have none. We've been refused pedestrian crossings, even to a children's park. And the last one, believe it or not, in 9 studies that we looked at all across the United States and Canada, including Hamilton, Toronto, Montreal, parked cars. Parked cars are a requirement in traffic calming because they set up a horizontal barrier that forces cars to slow down. And we've proved that. The moment that we put the no parking signs up, we saw a tremendous increase in speed on our street, which is actually still continuing today. We used to park our cars as residents strategically, particularly on the weekend, to calm the traffic, to calm the speed. I personally have lost 2 trees on my boulevard for cars crashing through the boulevard in inclement weather and smashing the trees down. A resident across the road lost a tree. We've had pets lost. We don't want a child lost. What I heard last week very clearly was that we need to protect our cyclists, to make it safer for them. I didn't hear anything about our children on the street. We have 37 children under 10 on our street who are fighting to cross a road to get to a park. There is no crosswalk. You phone and you will be told you have to cross at Oak Springs. There is no crosswalk at Oak Springs. You have to cross a grass boulevard just to get to the road. To me, it's nonsensical. We have had parking on that street for 23 years. We can only park for certain periods of time during the day. We have a speed limit that nobody adheres to. And council have already told us themselves that there's a 61 of 85 percentile, 61 kilometers an hour is the norm. It should be 50. And to get 50, maybe we need to look at a 40. So my argument is that, yes, it's a great inconvenience to reduce the parking. There is nowhere for us to park. We're told we have to go to Meadowland or somewhere around there. Meadowland has 22 spots for cars to park. And on the weekend, there were a minimum of 12 from the residents of Meadowland. So where are we supposed to go? Where are our guests supposed to come when they come for a Christmas party in a blizzard? How are they supposed to get to my house? We've had it for 23 years. It's worked fine. We've had a bicycle route for 23 years. Marked. It works fine. There's been no accidents, but the speed has been kept down. If you allow this, in my opinion, you're opening up a door for some serious, serious accident. And I don't want it to be one of the children on the street. Thank you.
Thank you for your information. I think you're going to have questions. Councillor Demoff?
I wondered if you could, thank you for coming tonight.
No problem.
You had mentioned issues with speeding and cars going at 95 kilometers an hour. Has that just happened since the parking was removed?
That has happened over a period of the years. We've had the police involved for a long time at the beginning. And it started when River Oaks Boulevard was previously opened. Originally, it only went to Meadowland when we first moved in. Then they extended it to Trafalgar Road, but there was no stop sign between Trafalgar Road and Oakmead. So for many, many years, for 23 years, we've had a speeding problem. The police have done periodic radar, not for quite a long time, but when they did, they clocked people in excess of 95 kilometers an hour. And it's no different today. And if you go and stand there at 7:30 at night or 7 o'clock in the morning, especially around 8:30, 8:45 when the school buses are there, you go and stand there and you watch the idiots come down that street. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So we've been parking our cars strategically to slow it down. And ironically, this week I've had some work done on my driveway. So we have had cars parked on that side with permission from the town, and it has been amazing to see how cars actually slow down to go around it. So it does work. And any traffic calming example that you've seen that I've looked at over here, it shows that you require parked cars. It's the one fundamental thing that will, in every single one that appears in every one, that will slow traffic down.
But I guess what's confusing me, though, is that you were getting speeds like this when the cars were allowed to park on the street. So you were getting 95 kilometers an hour. This hasn't happened since July when the bike lanes went
Oh,
in. You were
excuse me.
having-
No, I mentioned that it got really bad immediately when we put the no parking signs up for a week before we had it reversed. It was open season. What you did to that road was make it look like Le Mans. It was wide and it was spacious, and they were going down there so fast they couldn't even take the bend at the bottom without cutting through the bicycle lane.
Well, I certainly agree with you that there are idiots all over Oakville who drive too
Absolutely
quickly.
there are, but you know, when you on a street that has a 50-kilometer zone start losing trees because of excessive speed and pets because of there's a problem. And
But
for
again, I'd ask
23
you, did
years
that
it has.
happen since the bike lanes went in or when parking was allowed? When the trees came out, was that when cars were still allowed to park there, or was it just the
Absolutely
sum-
it was. Absolutely it was. But cars are not allowed to park there during certain times of the day, in the morning and in the evening. Okay? So when this happened one night, as far as I was concerned, it was 7 o'clock at night. There was nothing parked on the street because it was inclement. But we noticed, and everybody on the street will tell you, that the moment that those signs went up for no parking, the speeding increased again, significantly.
So, sir, just so I can be clear, in your mind, in your experience, when there are cars parked on your street at only some times of the day, you had better traffic conditions, and when you had no cars parked on the street during rush hours, that's when you had the trouble, and now you have it all the time. Or in other words, you still believe strongly, and your experience supports your belief, that parked cars calm traffic.
I firmly believe that, Mr. Mayor, and as I mentioned, if you come and stand there between 7 and 9 in the morning and 5 and 7 at night, you will see a huge increase in the speed, and that's when there's no cars parked there.
And your other information is that for 23 years you had the benefit of part-time parking as well as bike lanes, and you liked it that way.
Absolutely. I mean, the turnout that we had last week from the street was amazing, and the residents have all been communicating to the point where we've resurrected an old association that was around from 2005, because everybody feels very, very strongly about it.
Well, that's a good development. Thank you for your information. Now we've lit the fire. Councillor Elgar, Councillor Knoll, and Councillor Khan.
Thank you for coming forward tonight. You made accusations like the town of Oakville has done nothing about speeding, and the Halton Regional Police have done nothing about speeding. And I'm concerned where you're coming from with that.
Well, let's put it this way. When we first started, they were quite regular to come out, and they would park on our driveways. Over the years, you'll file a complaint, and we'll look at it. But you never see a police car. The only police car, and I'll tell you this very honestly, the only police car that I have seen in probably 5 years on my street was the very first night, the very first Saturday night that they implemented the no parking, and he was writing parking tickets on the street. That was the first, and that was the very, very first night that we had the no parking, back in August.
That probably wouldn't have been the police. That would have been our parking
No, it was
authority.
a police car, because I was walking my dog. I was walking by him, and
Surprised. Have you ever heard of the no need to speed? Like all the different things we have in Oakville, where you as a citizen can get like a board also to get the speed, and you write down the license
that I
plate
didn't
number?
know.
Have you done
Nobody's
any of
ever
that?
told me that. No.
And you've never
I've
heard
seen
of that?
I've seen it quite regularly. Yeah, and that would help. I mean, we're at the point where some of the residents have talked about getting together and going out and putting our own boards up. When we, 4 or 5 of us standing on the street with boards to
I
slow
think
it
your
down.
ward councillors will be happy to help you with that, because it sounds like that's where you've got a huge issue, and probably in time for the residents to engage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for your presentation this evening. I want to, similar to what the Mayor did, I want to clarify something you said because I want to be sure I understand it. So you're so convinced that parked cars assist in traffic calming, you've actually gone to the point of parking your own vehicles on the street?
Yeah.
Can you explain the conditions and when you would do that?
During the day, particularly on a weekend, we'll park our cars on the street instead of on the driveway. and you will visibly see cars slowing down.
And you're doing this intentionally, and it's organized in order to calm traffic.
We did it for years to calm traffic, and many people didn't even know anything about this, and I didn't know that parked cars was a fundamental in traffic calming till this started, and I had to go and do some research. But we just did it because we felt that it would work, and it did work. Absolutely, it worked. This week was a classic example where you saw cars that really slowing right down to get by the parked cars because of the works that was being done on my driveway. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Khan?
Thank you for your comments. One of the objectives here is to make cycling safer, and you can appreciate that. But that's premised on the assumption that the safety of cyclists is a problem on your street in the first place. And you said you've lived there for 23 years. Are you aware of any injuries or any accidents sustained by cyclists?
No. Can I tell you why, honestly? Because the cyclists ride on the sidewalk. No, I'm not being funny. If you were to stop any cyclist on my street, and we've done it, and there's people sitting here, they will tell you, they'll ask them, why are you on the sidewalk? Because it's not safe on the road. Honestly.
So in other words, what you're saying is that it won't be any safer for cyclists, yet the cost is going to be increased speeding and the loss of parking spaces for the residents.
It won't be any safer for the cyclists?
Safer for the cyclists.
It won't be safe for the cyclists if there's no cars parked on the street. No, absolutely. I agree with you 100% there.
Thank you very much for your information.
Thank you, sir.
The next delegation is Pierre Girard, again regarding the active transportation facilities along River Oaks Boulevard.
Welcome, Mr. Girard. Council looks forward to your information.
Just trying to see how to... This one? Yes, thank you. Now, there's already many points which have been made, so I'm not going to go through this presentation in detail. But I will just mention that the initial issue was speeding, which is why the lane calming situation came about. And we were quite satisfied for many years with this. It slowed down traffic. Bicyclists could still, during peak hours, travel there. There was no issue. Everybody was fairly satisfied. The addition of bicycle lanes does not increase the safety, and in fact, it causes certain problems, I believe, both for cyclists and for us, for parking and for safety. First, you cannot have bicycle lanes through River Oaks all the way. From Mount On, there's 3 lanes of traffic because there's turning into the churches, sorry. So that excludes bicyclists going through on the street. There's also other options, like on Upper Middle, there's a lane which one can use. Whether that's being used constructively or not, that's a different issue. But there are other possibilities. There has been numerous problems. You heard about the accidents. Parked cars have reduced speeding. There has been difficulty in accessing Castlefield Park, and I won't go through the stop situation, but you can see that on the top picture, it's the crossing to Castlefield Park. It's the only crossing that is available. And what you do have is no stop there. You have a stop at Oak Springs, but if you try crossing there, it's through a muddy field, and there's no stop further on. Now, let's see if I can do this. This is just to explain very visually what the situation is when there is no parked cars. And that doesn't seem to work. Yeah, you should just be clicking and it should simply go. On the slide, yeah.
Do you have a video here?
Yes, that is a video.
don't think there's one on this one. There's no video on this slide.
Oh, somehow this has been reduced. Well, for the benefits, I'm sorry, I wanted to show a video here, which I did show at the committee meeting previously. What should have been shown is a car going through here, going totally through the bicycle lane, cutting across, and right in front of the park where the crossing is. So since there is no car, the situation has gone much worse. And it's less safe for bicycles because people are cutting across because they're speeding. Now, we would like to make a very specific recommendation. Parking has slowed down speeding. We were satisfied with the present situation. No parking in peak hours did allow using of the bicycle routes as much as possible. There are other routes which are available. I'm not an expert in bicycling, though I do bicycle a lot myself in Oakville, and I usually don't use that particular route, even though it's on my street, just for safety reason. If we don't have parking, then we have to give the burden of on our neighbors which don't get the benefits. We'll park on Meadowland, for example. We'll take up all their street parking, and they have no benefits of it, simply because we have no other places. So we would really suggest that you ratify the committee, the service committee recommendation, which was option C, to go back to the previous situation to allow parking during off-peak hours, and with a recommendation for the traffic department to look at other situations, either with the bicycling or with crossing to Castlefield Park or to Peely Park, and these safety issues. Now, everybody else has probably said the same thing, and I can truthfully say that a lot of the people on River Oaks, I'm part of this River Oaks Association. I was back in the early 2000s. We recreated it, and the feeling is that they would strongly recommend going back to the previous situation of option C.
Thank you very much for your information. Councillor Khan has a question for you.
I think you clarified it, but I just want to be sure, because you mentioned we a few times. Are you here speaking on behalf of the River Oaks Resident Association? Or are you speaking as an individual, or are you an executive on the association?
I am the president of the association.
Speaking in that capacity?
As far as I can, since the association has just been recreated and we didn't have a general meeting to ratify everything, but yes, I am speaking on behalf of the residents of Oakville, of River Oaks.
Thank you very much, sir, for your information. Oh, Councillor DeMoff.
Can you clarify for me where you say, as the residents were satisfied with the present situation, that was with parking on the street, so you didn't feel there was an issue with speeding when there was parking on the street?
Let's put it this way, we were more satisfied with that than the present situation where we lost the parking, plus speeding has increased. There is improvements that we certainly would recommend for River Oaks. For example, crossing to Castlefield Park, maybe moving a stop or probably having the police check the speeding more. But as far as the item on discussion here, which is specifically the parking, we prefer the previous situation where parking was allowed on off-peak hours.
Thank you.
Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for coming forward and sharing your views again. You mentioned you had a residents association previously. Is that correct?
Yes,
and
I was vice president of ROAR previously. I guess there was no situation for a while, so I think the interest disappeared in 2004. So now's the time to restart and look at a few issues.
Given the fact that several people have made reference to this having been going on for some time, the speeding and the traffic concerns in the area, was that an issue that the organization dealt with previously? Or
We had brought up the situation of the speeding before. We had brought up the situation of the stop sign. It was not quite resolved to maybe our satisfaction, but the situation had improved with a stop sign. But since then, there was no crossing to Castlefield Park before. There was no ramp. Now the city has installed a ramp, and naturally people are starting to use it. But it's fairly unsafe because there's no stop, there's no indication, there's no crosswalk. So that is something that we would like to bring up to the attention of the council.
thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your information. Madam
Yep.
Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation is Henry Wargis, again regarding the River Oaks Boulevard, item 3 of the Community Services Committee.
Welcome, Mr. Warsha. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us and myself. I'm a 7-year resident. My name is Henry Wargis. I live at 196 River Oaks Boulevard East. And I moved to Oakville 7 years ago because I lived in a very busy city in Peel Region. And moved to Oakville because it's a very small town atmosphere, and honestly, it's the greatest city I've ever lived in. I, like all the residences in River Oaks, I am very family oriented and I care what happens in our community, and I enjoy family time, love our vibrant community for the parks, the trails, the community centers, the incredible schools, the bike lanes, and are proud to live here. And I am concerned for safety of my family, especially for my children and the children of my friends and neighbors. Most of us do pride ourselves on having family gatherings and keeping the family unit strong, and I also value my relationship and keeping my values with my neighbors very strong as well. Oakville definitely is a livable city, as you mentioned, Mayor. The mission for the city is to preserve family status and cultural heritage, streetscapes, farmsteads, archaeological sites, traditions, and its contextual value to the community. We feel that it's very important to choose option C due to the fact that parked cars do protect the street and to slow people down. I myself did lose a tree on River Oaks, and I have the tree work order that I did submit to council last week, and it said when the person came to fix my my tree that tree was lost on Boulevard. I don't know if you can see that or not, but
It's being lit up as we
Okay, very
speak.
good.
There you go.
so it has my my street address, and it says task complete. 1 red maple, 1 meter east of driveway. Try to straighten. Hit by car December 2010. That tree was taken out at anywhere between midnight and 6 in the morning when parking is not on the street. So somebody had lost control, hit the tree so hard that it bent right over. I had called the next day, and they had come out within a couple of days actually, and said that they were going to come in the spring and straighten that tree out for me, and they did. And I'm very happy that we didn't lose the tree, and that tree's grown perfectly to this very day. But it was repaired, and like I said, that's the work order. So that was one of the first things that I wanted to show. Speeding does occur. I'm a bus driver also for the region of Peel. I work for the city of Mississauga, for Mississauga Transit, and I see all kinds of speeding. You talk about idiots on the road, there's idiots in every city, like you said, and it is a major problem. And we have to work hard as communities to keep our streets safe. If we're not vigilant, the police try their best, but the cops can't do everything, you know? Like, we have to try, and we have to stand up to the plate, and we have to protect ourselves. I have 3 surveys also from traffic calming, one from Montana, USA, one from City of Toronto, and one from Hamilton. In all the reports, they mention as parking is used to calm traffic. There are 6 measures. Traffic calming measures fit into one of 6 categories: passive measures, deflection, narrowing, diversion, restriction, education, and enforcement, and signage and pavement markings. Right here, they talk about raised medians and on-street parking. And that's for the Bozeman area, transportation in Montana, USA. I also have one from the city of Hamilton. Oh, sorry. That one's more clear. As you can see, it says here, City of Hamilton. They talk about a couple of streets here, Barton Street, James Street, whatnot. Include on-street parking. Ontario, specifically Toronto. City of Toronto, traffic calming measures, edge lines, parking, and parking islands. 184 River Oaks lost a cat, and someone else on the street lost a dog a couple years ago due to speeding. As I mentioned, speeding mostly occurs on streets that are totally empty, that have curves, just like Pierre showed in the video. There's a curve that comes around. People really take up speed on the street. And when the street's empty, especially at night, I've seen cars go in excess of 100 for sure, 100%. I was happy that my parents didn't have to walk very far this weekend, parking on Meadowlands to come to my house for Thanksgiving dinner. They actually did park on the street, as a few of my other guests did, and we were very happy with that as well. I just wanted to show you a couple examples of the Meadowlands parking. If we were forced to park at Meadowlands and River Oaks, I just have the intersection sign there. Also have the street. There's only parking on one side of the street, which is on the west side. On the other side, you can't really see it here, but there's a no parking sign, which I've taken a closer photo up, and I've blown it up. So you can only park on one side of the street. There's 21 or 22 spots, 12 of which are usually used by the residences on the side. And lastly, I just want to say that this is a traffic sign that is all over Canada, and it says share the road. Pedestrians, cars, and bicycles, we can all make it happen. And I think if we worked hard enough, and if we go with option C and leave the cars there as a parking to deter the speeders, we'll all be happy. And we definitely need to share the road, and we have to encourage people to call in and use those services that we have to report speeders. I know I've done it from my bus as well. When I've been on break, I've taken plate numbers down, and I've written them down, and I've called Peel Police, and I have put in complaints to speeders in Peel. And just on the other day when I got on the QEW, there was a Honda Civic that was flying in and out of traffic, and I did also report that at Star OPP, and that was in our city, but I called OPP because they are the governor that does all the trafficking on the highways. As you can see by the turnout today, we have a community that cares about each other, stands together unanimously to ask. We ask you to vote in favor of option C, reinstate the parking, keep the biking lanes, make everybody happy, having people share the road as intended, and preserving our streetscape. No parking 7 to 9 and 5 to 7, and keep enjoying the active lifestyle of living and playing in the greatest city in the region of Halton, on River Oaks, and our livable Oakville. We also have to remember that driving is a privilege and not a right, and it can be taken away at any time. That's what people don't understand. So we definitely need to take a look at that as well, and think about possibly reducing the speed on River Oaks to 40. And the last thing I want to say is that no matter if you're driving a car, a bus, a truck, a bicycle, or if you're pedestrian, you always have to be courteous and share the road with everybody, and proceed with caution at all times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your information. Councillor DeMoff, did you have a question?
Thank you for coming, and I agree with you about sharing the road. I couldn't agree with you more. But would you share the road the way it has been in the past before we put in the bike lanes? Would you share the road with cars and feel safe riding on your street?
If you look at cycling lanes were invented actually in Europe, as Bruce mentioned. So I didn't really bring that point up, but what I did want to bring up, though, is they were invented to get people moving to work. And why they were put in is to get cars off the road between 7 and 9 and 5 to 7, or 4 to 7, depending on where you live. So they were extensively developed in Denmark, actually, where they actually have, I believe, every day 120,000 people cycling to work every day. They were established to get people moving between those times, and there is no parking on our street at those times. So I believe that's why the bike lanes are there.
But I guess my question, though, was do you feel safe sharing the road on your street if we put parking back? Would you ride your bike on this? Are you safe riding on your street and sharing the road with the cars, given the speed that your neighbors have said they're traveling? I guess one of your neighbors was talking about riding on the sidewalk, which is not legal in Oakville.
That's right. Only for children it is, actually. I think for children under 16 it's allowed, but I'm not sure about the actual bylaw. I do feel safe. I'm a confident driver with my bike and my car, and I don't have a problem with that at all. You know, you always have to have eyes in the front and back and side of your head when you're driving on any street. It doesn't matter, no matter how slow traffic's going or how fast. I do feel safe, but I do really think that we need to try to reduce that speed for safety. Like I said, we've lost a couple pets on the street already, and you know, like we've had a couple close calls. My neighbors, their son almost got hit by a car about probably 4 weeks ago. So if we can do something to reduce the speed and use parking as a deterrent, and actually bring in some police, more like policing there, you know, and also I think, you know, us as neighbors, we should be calling the police every day when we see that, and we should be reporting things as much as possible. But I know for a fact that sometimes the cars are going so fast you can't even read that license plate. That's how fast they're going.
You had a couple of documents that you put up, and I wondered if you could put them back again. The City of Hamilton?
Yes.
You had highlighted for arterial roads, I believe, but yours is not an arterial road, yours is a collector road, and I just didn't have time to read what their report said about collector roads for traffic calming.
Okay, and that was the City of Hamilton, you said?
Yeah, and also the City of Toronto one I wanted to see, so if you're pulling them out.
City of Toronto's
So City of Toronto, it says that uses edge lines, right?
Yes.
As a non-physical means of addressing traffic concerns. So that's along the same lines as putting in the bike lanes, the edge lines, right? Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. And the Hamilton one, I have it here. Like I said, we're all for the bike lanes and sharing the road. It's not the issue of the bike lanes.
Can you go back? Can you move it down a bit? Because just above this, I just wanted to read what it said. No, put it back the other way. Okay, you've highlighted something that's an arterial road.
Yes.
Just above that, it says collector road, and I just wondered what the report said about collector roads for traffic calming. Just down a little. Keep going. Keep going. There. So it says local and collector neighborhood streets. Right. That's what your street is, right?
Yes. Yes. And what did you want to see there?
I just wanted to see what it says. So it says, depending on the roadway design.
For the benefit of the public, since I have a pretty good view of it, why don't I read it out, since we also have people at home, and I don't know how well this goes over television or video on the web. Local and collector neighborhood streets are intended to provide access as a primary function, with the needs of all road users generally given priority over moving traffic. When residential and collector roadways become cut-through routes, traffic volume, vehicle speed, and road user safety become issues. Given their, that's what it says, perhaps it meant become an issue. Given their lower operating speeds, all forms of traffic calming devices are recommended by the Canadian Guide for use on residential streets. So that and the rest of it just says, depending on the roadway design and posted speed, some abrupt horizontal and vertical devices are not recommended on collector streets, i.e. speed humps and chicanes, etc. And certainly this council has some experience with the problems with those. But the main value of the quote, I think, is to make clear that for local and collector roads, all of the traffic calming devices are recommended by the Canadian Guide.
Okay, and what you've highlighted, though, is for arterial roads, right?
Right, I just wanted to iterate the on-street parking, though.
So-
An arterial road.
Right.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
I don't want to leave anybody
Well, it
confused
doesn't-
here.
Yeah,
One of the methods detailed in the Canadian Guide is parking, and parking is one of the uses recommended for residential streets.
and it also doesn't cost anything.
Yeah. So, thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for bringing your information.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having us, and option C, please.
Okay, well, we'll see. Madam Clerk, I believe we have 2 more delegations.
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor. The next delegation is Linyan Yang regarding the River Oaks Boulevard implementation of active transportation facilities. Again, item 3 of the Community Services Committee.
Welcome, Ms. Yang. Council looks forward to your information.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and councils. I'm a housewife, actually, and I have 2 girls, and I newly moved in this neighborhood right before summer. And tonight, I'm speaking not only standing myself and also with my neighbors who cannot attending this meeting tonight. They're living on the 184 and cross street 185. So I'm on 181. They all have same as my family. We all have 2 girls, and the situation is the speed on our boulevard is really fast. Actually, in the morning I send my daughter to the school bus stop, which is beside the castle. The park appears just short councils, and there are no stop sign or cross street sign, and to pay attention to the school bus or watch the child, and in the morning at least I counted every morning since last week, and at least 30 kids cross the street twice. Because some caregiver or nanny or mom bring their younger kids, send the older kids to the bus stop, right? And we have to pass twice, actually. So we are thinking about trying to reduce the speed, and we'll talk about while we're waiting for the school bus come. And many mom told me they will ask the school council last year and put the signatures and the paper letter, but no response. So tonight I'm here just want to say one point, which is trying to help us, reduce our street speed, and maybe use the white line on the middle of the street instead of the yellow line. So I strongly support option C, will be the better choice, more economic and more, financial saving. Thank you.
Thank you for your information. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The final delegation this evening is Flavia Girard regarding, again, item 3 of the Community Services Committee, River Oaks Boulevard.
Ms. Girard, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us attend this meeting. I think a lot of what I was going to say has been said, so I'm not going to repeat myself. I would strongly recommend option C, as there's older people in our street. Across we have an older couple. There's a bungalow, and next to us there's a recently widowed lady. They're elderly people, which I don't think it would be fair for them to park on the side there. The neighbors across, especially for older people, they walk with difficulty. It would be disastrous to have them walk in winter when there's snow and ice in the streets. They could, you perfectly well know what could happen, so that they could have fractures. So that basically is, I'm recommending the option C for safety. And parked cars do reduce speed.
Okay, thank you very much for your information. Councillor Demoff? Sorry, Mrs. Girard? I think Councillor Demoff has a question for you.
Just a quick question, actually. You mentioned about elderly needing to park on the street. How many cars can you park in the driveway on your street?
On my driveway or theirs?
Yours first, and then the elderly people who you said couldn't, would
Ours,
need to park on the street.
probably, I guess, 4 cars. Theirs is much smaller, and they have family as well, and they have elderly family that comes to see them as well, and that, I don't think you could be able to park all the cars in his driveway. And our next door neighbor has daughters, and one of them lives in the beaches, but she has small children, so this would be an option for them a problem. And I don't think they could park all their cars due to their family size.
So you can park 4 cars in your driveway, though?
Yeah.
And is that including a garage, or is that over and above the garage?
That's, no, that would be including the garage.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, that ends our delegations, and I thank everyone for coming out and sharing their information. What we're going to do now is we're going to turn to the standing committee reports, some of which we've been discussing tonight. And for the benefit of the public, let me explain that when a standing committee, which is roughly half of council plus the mayor, considers a matter and adopts a recommendation, and council wishes to approve that recommendation, then the committee report and whatever's in it is adopted by council without too much going on beyond that. And when council has a divided opinion about it, or members of council wish to change a recommendation in the standing committee report, they will ask for an item from community services or administrative services to be held out from the report so that council can approve the rest of it and then deal with a debate on the individual item that's, we call it separated. So it's separated out. And tonight, I've had indications that on the Community Services Committee report from October 2nd, the Active Transportation Master Plan item we've been talking about on River Oaks, item number 3 may be separated out for a discussion and an eventual decision. And similarly, on the Administrative Services Committee report, item number 6 may be separated, and that concerned the discussion we had earlier with a delegation about the Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital construction and noise issue. I won't, there'll be some more procedural footwork after that, and I'm going to leave off explaining that and turn to Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would be pleased to separate item 3 from the Community Services Committee and item 6 from the Administrative Services Committee, and give you a motion to approve the remainder of both those others unless there's further separation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar, is that a second?
Yes, it is a second.
Councillor Adams, do you have another separation?
Can I separate item number 7 from the Admin Service Committee? It's the item regarding the audit services.
Which item?
Item number 7 regarding the audit services.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion from Councillor Duddick, seconded by Councillor Elgar, to approve community services and administrative services, but for community services item number 3 and administrative services number 6 and 7. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Then those are adopted. And we will turn now to item number 3 from Community Services Committee. And I would turn first to the separator, Councillor Duddick, and then Councillor DeMoff.
My questions are mostly around item number 6, but I know my colleague, Councillor DeMoff, had indicated the other, so I thought it would be easier just to put the two together. That's why I moved it.
Well, thank you very much. Councillor DeMoff.
I have a question for staff. Can you let council know when the speed surveys that were done? In the CSC report, it mentions that speed surveys were done which warranted putting in the in traffic calming. I'm just wondering when those were conducted.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have exact dates of when the speed survey work was done, but I could reassure you that it was prior to the changes that occurred in the summertime. We would have taken speed survey information and that is what instigated the need to review it as a traffic calming candidate along River Oaks Boulevard.
And have any speed surveys been done since the changes were made?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not so far. Usually the protocol that we follow is that we implement the changes during a given year, and then we would follow up in the following year with a follow-up survey to determine if the changes that we've made have succeeded in bringing down the operating speeds on the roadway. So that typically would be planned for, say, the spring of 2013.
But at this point, you don't know when they did the survey to determine that some kind of traffic calming. It was when parking was on the street, but you don't know whether it was a year ago or 2 years ago, 3 years ago when it was done.
It certainly was when parking was still permitted on the street. I don't think it would be as old as 2 or 3 years ago, but you know, probably within the last year.
And do we have studies that show whether or not lines on the street do in fact slow traffic versus parking cars?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly through our experience and our menu of traffic calming features, we use both methods. We have evidence over the years that says that when you narrow the driving lanes of the roadway, which is basically creating edge lines or introducing bicycle lanes and narrowing the driving lane, we do succeed in reducing the operating speeds. We also find the same result, and I'm not sure by comparison how successful one is over the other, but we can't dispute that parked cars are part of that solution as well.
I'm just wondering if, we don't have any staff here tonight, if we could refer this back to CSC to get some of the answers on the speed survey at CSC, and staff could be present.
We are at the pleasure of council.
Councillor Demoff is moving a referral back to CSC for her purpose of getting her questions answered, right? And seconder? Sure. Councillor Elgar seconds. Do you want to speak to your motion to refer?
I would actually. One of the things that seems to have come up at CSC before, but also tonight, is that speed is the issue on the street. And it certainly seems to be a major concern of all the residents, and they want something done about speeding, but we don't know when the speed survey was done, and I think it would be helpful to have some of the answers to do with speeding before we make a decision whether taking out a bike lane or not is the right thing to do. I was at a summit on Friday, and the mayor of Madison, Wisconsin talked about bike boulevards being traffic calming on steroids. So I think before we start talking about whether bike lanes are the right way to go or parking is the right way to know, we need all the information, and the only way we can get that is to send it back and get some information on this speeding.
Any other speakers? Councillor Adams, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Khan. Did I see any other hands here? Councillor Grant.
I had a question for staff, and we've got this motion of deferral. Can we continue with our questions with our staff?
I think you have to vote on referral.
Okay, then I'll wait until we.
So I'm looking for speakers on referral. Okay. I think Councillor Grant might have been next. I erred in the order I said the names. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly appreciate trying to examine the issue of speeding on the street and when the speed survey was done, but we know that a speed survey was done. We do know that speeding was a problem on the street. To go back and make these people wait 3 more weeks to find out this bit of information as to when it was done achieves nothing, I think. So I would prefer that we just go ahead and work on trying to build a proper decision tonight than to go back and find out when it was determined that we all agreed that there's speeding on the street.
Councillor Knoll.
That was pretty much where I was going. I just wanted to emphasize the fact that in 3 weeks, we're just going to be confirming there's a speeding issue on the street. I've been at this council table for 12 years, and I can tell you there's been a speeding issue on River Oaks, as there is in many parts of Oakville, for forever and ever. About 11 years ago, I did stand on River Oaks Boulevard and a couple other streets when we did the PC Cops thing with the sign and shook our fingers at people that were speeding too quickly on that street, and Wembley and a few others in the neighborhood. So I'm not sure what a deferral at this point is going to do except put off a decision and bring everybody out a second time when really that deferral is, the reports that Councillor Demoff is looking for really is not going to be adding any new inputs to this decision. If there is some desire to have reports at some point in the future, then I think that that could be part of the motion, an add-on to say let's report on this entire issue at some point down the road. But I don't think there's any value to deferring this. We need to get this over with and let the people of River Oaks know what the future holds for their street.
Thank you, Councillor Noel. Councillor Elgar?
Thank you very much. I'd like to deal with the facts, and when staff come back, if the referral is approved, I would also ask that staff advise us of what the results have been of implementing bike lanes in other parts of the town and what the impact has been on speeding, so that we know where we're going before we make the final decision. I would like to see that also added to the report. So I will support the referral with that in there as an addendum.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Any other speakers? Well then, Councillor Khan, thank you.
I won't be supporting the referral either, because I think that, as Councillor Noel and Councillor Grant said, it's not going to be adding much to it. And these are valid questions that ought to have been raised at the last CSC meeting. We get our agenda on a Thursday before the meeting, and there was plenty of time to ask for staff of those questions at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Then, before I call the vote, I'm going to speak about it. At the committee, I thought I heard clearly from the residents that the issue is the loss of a amenity that they'd relied upon for 23 or 24 years, which was on-street parking in off-peak hours. And I said then, in joining the majority of the committee in voting for option C, that I'm not comfortable taking away from a neighborhood an amenity they've enjoyed and built their lifestyle around, unless it's for a really good reason. It's got to be a big community-wide need. And with a much better bike lane a block away, much safer too, and the discontinuous nature of this one, and the relative lack of bike traffic, I'm not seeing that wider, large community need to take this amenity away from these residents of Oakville. I heard tonight, I heard my colleagues, some of my colleagues on council say the issue is speed, but I heard tonight from the people who delegated to us that the issue is the loss of their parking. And the speed was the side issue in that their parking, while also an amenity to them, was a further benefit in that it helped reduce the speed. That was the testimony of their experience that we heard. So I can't support referral. I believe also from the committee that we were told that this is possibly the only spot in town where the active transportation master plan is taking away parking from people who had it on this part-time basis. So for all of these reasons, I think referral is unnecessary, and I would ask you to not refer it. And I'll call the vote now. All those in favor of referring it, please raise your hands to be counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those against referral? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Referral fails. Now we have, we need a mover and seconder for recommendation 3, I believe. Adams and Grant.
Speak to CSC recommendation 3,
Apparently, I misspoke. It was Grant and Noel. Councillor Elgar, you have a question.
I wonder whether the councillors moving it would add one addendum to this so that we keep the active transportation master plan alive that we have all approved, and then we would add in on point number 2 the reintroduction of the previous time of day parking restrictions as detailed under option C of the report dated September the 12th or September 14th, 2012, be approved on an interim basis to be re-examined in 2013. I would ask whether you'd see that as a friendly amendment to have a look at this so that we do have an active transportation plan and either we're in or we're out. So let's get it on the table and find out. So I'd like to do that.
Councillor Knoll.
I will not support that as an amendment, but I would support requesting a report for future reference. But I would not want to leave the uncertainty for the residents for the reasons both of the speeding issue and the more important amenity issue that you refer to. So I would be in favor of adding a codicil which requests a report, but I would not want to make it conditional.
Councillor Grant.
And just to add to that, my point the entire time from when this started is why are we rushing? Why are we pushing so hard? We're not talking about ignoring the active transportation master plan in this case. We're just talking about stepping back, taking a breath, and understanding what we're dealing with here. As the mayor mentioned at CSC, we had heard staff is dealing with a very unique situation, such a large strip of street with 80 homes, having something removed from their way of lives that is unusual and probably a first and last for this plan. I truly believe, the mayor had said earlier in his speech about the status of Oakville that we need to work together with creativity and imagination. And if we put deadlines on creativity and imagination, you're not coming up with something good. You're again putting a deadline and rushing towards that deadline. So I wouldn't say as a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Knoll. If we were to have some sort of a report, what would the report be comprised of?
Your Worship, what I heard was that there's an interest in determining whether or not bike lanes have a positive impact on traffic calming. So I believe that was what the issue was in the context of the Transportation Master Plan.
Well, I think the Canadian Handbook, our staff have told us at the committee that both are effective, and Mr. McMillan stipulated, that means he said without reservation that parked cars are very effective as calming. Yeah. I don't believe we're going to discover anything new in this area. A report that would be useful for our residents.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Did I say parked cars? Because I meant bike lanes.
You said bike lanes.
Okay.
But they're both well established in the literature,
right,
in the handbook that the traffic engineers use. I mean, staff can just send you the page. Yeah. The report that would be useful to the lives of our residents would be a report to follow up on improving the pedestrian transportation in this specific, unusual street.
I already have that written.
And Councillor Knoll.
So thank you, Worship. And I was really trying to find the compromise you talked about earlier in your presentation of how the council works. So I was simply responding to some concerns, and I don't want to make the motion conditional, Councillor Grant's motion conditional, or the option C conditional on some study. I was simply offering that up as a form of compromise. But if that's not what is desired by the person who suggested it, then I'll withdraw it. But I do have also on my motion form an additional clause that Councillor Grant and I have spoken about, and that is exactly that we do report back on opportunities to increase pedestrian safety along River Oaks Boulevard.
Alrighty. So Council, the Councillor Adams. Oh wait, I'm sorry.
I have a question
I believe,
of our staff.
I'm sorry. It's Councillor DeMoff.
Oh.
Someday,
if Councillor Adams would like to ask a question of staff, feel free. I wanted to speak.
Someday we'll have a council chamber where I can have better view. But anyway, Councillor Adams and then Councillor DeMoff.
Oh my, oh my, oh my. I think I heard the answer. I'm not part of the Community Service Committee where I understand there was great long debate about the matter. And I hope I don't bore those who might have already heard this answer, and I think you may have already said it, but I just wanted to double check with our staff about the nature of on-road bike lanes versus signed bike routes. And I was looking at our transportation master plan, and on page 111 of it, there's a map that shows various streets with different designations. And as I understood it, this one that we're talking about was one that was meant to be a on-street bike lane. And we're now talking about option C, which is converting that to the bike route. Do we assign, yes, a proper signed bike route, and it would meet the definition of bike route in our active transportation master plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, essentially that's what would be happening with option C, I believe, yes.
And did I understand correctly, there are no other roads that in our active transportation master plan are intended to be a bike on-road bike lane that have the same width as this particular section with existing on-street parking?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to be honest, I heard that conversation at CSC myself. That's what the answer was from town staff. I can't, in my own knowledge, I can't tell you that answer absolutely, but certainly that was the feedback that the committee was getting last week at CSC.
That there are no similar roadways.
Correct. Yes.
Throughout Oakville. Okay. So if I'm looking at the designated map in the ATMP, where I see a signed bike route, it's not in any way, shape, or size the same thing as what we're looking at here. We're talking about apples and oranges in terms of the designation in our cycling network.
Mr. Bloomer, Mr. Green has something as well.
Through you, Mayor Burton, one of the reasons this particular route is unique actually goes back to the original subdivision design, which I was involved with some 30-odd years ago. River Oaks Boulevard from Trafalgar over to Neagawa was actually, its road width was intended to accommodate the bike path and the boulevards. And like the boulevard in that section of road between the curb and the sidewalk is extra wide. Residents today use that to park on. But originally it was intended to be an off-road bike path. And if I rewind the clock, Councillor, about 28, actually before I moved in up there, probably about 29 years ago when River Oaks was built, the section from 6th Line to Neagawa, the developer was getting ready to build the bicycle path on the boulevard when a petition came to Oakville Council to stop the bicycle path, because it was felt that that was going to be an infringement on the local front yards. And the council of the day chose to move the bicycle path out onto the roadway. The compromise, and this was the residents between, at that time, 6th Line, probably went over as far as Munns Avenue, because it didn't extend all the way to River Oaks. And I'm sorry for the history lesson, but to give you the unique character, the residents on that section agreed to have the not only no parking, but no stopping. And so the section from 6th Line to Neagawa is actually a prohibition, no stopping at any time of the day. When the section went in between 6th Line and Oakmead, again, I was involved in that one, and Mr. Len McLeod and I were working at Public Works together, and the decision at that time was what you see out there, or what was previously out there, was a time of day restriction, because back in those days, generally the bicycle paths were looked at as a recreational, not the transportation feature. And it was felt that during the daytime, bikes could operate with parked cars, and during the peak, it was better to have that restriction. So that's the history of that section. That was the only section, because after that, we chose not to try to build on collector roads bicycle paths any further. That's the uniqueness and the history, according to Councillor Bird and myself, who lived through those debates.
So
Mr. Mayor, years of speeding and other Thanks.
So it pays to have some veterans around.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to say that pays to have an engineer, a veteran engineer as our CAO.
You're just partial to engineers, I know.
I'm just partial to engineers. That's wonderful history. So am I understanding that correctly, that this was originally intended to be an on-road bicycle facility?
A boulevard.
A boulevard, but
Yeah,
but
it
then
was
the
to be
space
built
got used.
adjacent to the sidewalk in the boulevard,
But this,
similar to Upper Middle Road.
Okay, but the space then got used as
That's right.
as roadway. So
That's right.
okay, very good. So it was supposed to be separated, but it ended up getting sucked into the roadway itself.
Councillor
That's,
Bird.
that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
if I
Thank you so
remember
much.
The argument, by removing the bicycle path from everybody's boulevard, it allowed more on-site parking for the cars. Therefore, we could normally get 2 more cars without interfering with the bike path. So we were only giving up 1 on the road. So the idea was by transferring it on the road, we were creating more parking. Now we find out that, in fact, that's been used up and we need the on-street parking as well. But that wasn't highlighted at the time.
Thank you. It's good to know when things are working as designed. Councillor Demoff, thank you for your patience.
Actually, first I have a procedural question. Are we debating right now Councillor Elgar's motion, or do we have a motion or amendment? Or is that, I'm a little confused where we are in this process.
To the best of my knowledge and belief, we have a motion and we don't have an amendment because we don't have Councillor Elgar indicated a desire to move an amendment, but I think it'd be fair to say he never got it to the point where I could ask for a seconder for it. He's free to do that now.
Yeah, I would ask for a seconder.
Councillor Demoff seconds. So could you hand up your amendment, please, Councillor Elgar? And I also have an amendment to CSC number 3, signed by Councillor Grant and moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Knoll, which would add an item 3 to the report, that staff report, we're going to have to study this a little carefully, that staff report back on opportunities to improve pedestrian safety on River Oaks Boulevard East. So, Councillor Elgar, is your amendment?
My amendment's pretty short. If you take a look at page 25 of the report, you go to what was moved by Councillor Grant, and at the end of item number 2, you add the words, on an interim basis to be re-examined in 2013.
Okay. So, Councillor Duddick?
I was going to ask a question in regards to, you had mentioned an indication that Councillor Knoll had an amendment to what was passed at committee. And so it's possible to support something like that, even though you can vote against the actual main motion, because I am supportive of safety, but not of the main motion.
I will take that as a request to separate the amendment by Councillors Grant and Knoll from the main motion if we ever get to it, or when we get to it, and I will, or actually, yeah, that's true. So if we pass the amendment, then we'll separate it when we go to the main motion. Thank you. As for the Councillor Elgar and Councillor Demoff amendment, well, we'll deal with that one first because it started first. And Madam Clerk, Councillor Demoff, did you want to?
I just had another question. So I will still have an opportunity to speak to the main motion when we get to that.
Oh, yeah. All right, so Councillor Elgar's motion, which is to limit this, as I understand it, to make this decision on an interim basis to be re-examined in 2013. Councillor Knoll?
So I have a question with respect to the amendment. Can I ask that now of the mover?
Yep.
So what would we be examining between now and at some future date in 2013? What information, what data set would we have to re-examine this decision at that time?
Thank you for that question. Actually, my concern is to do with the active transportation plan that we have approved on a go-forward basis. And that would give us time to see whether there are other areas in town where we're going to have the same situation. And if that is the case, maybe we should be relooking at the complete active transportation plan before we go any further, because an awful lot of work has been put into it. And I just want to make sure, in fact, that this could be the only area where that could happen, because if we keep going to council and changing our decision of the active transportation plan every time, we got a huge issue going forward. So I want to stop that by next year before we get into any further complications with anybody in the public eye.
Well, Your Worship, just speaking to the amendment of the motion, then I'm opposed to that. I do not believe that there is any additional information specific to this scenario that will occur between now and at some point in 2013 that would necessarily trigger a reconsideration or would necessarily trigger a change in council's position that we're taking today. I think the residents have brought forth some compelling information, both from a speed point of view as well as a parking amenity point of view. I think their points are very valid. They're going to be valid. They're as valid today as they will be in 2013. If we want to reevaluate or have the staff analyze other scenarios where this may come into place and rejig the TMP, then I'm fine with that, but I don't want to do it on the altar of River Oaks Boulevard. I think that point is very clear. The rationale has been set out very clearly by the residents, by my colleague who carried this matter most of the way, and I believe that time is right to make the decision now and give these folks some peace of mind going forward.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. As far as I'm aware, any plan that we have in the town of Oakville is a so-called living document, and I have no problems with somebody coming forward and saying, you know what, when you're thinking over the master area, this little section here, you might want to rethink that whole part. And we've heard from staff that this is a unique situation. It's not a precedent-setting situation. It is unique. It is bizarre in the way it's been rolled out, and all we're saying is, let's take a breath, let's take a piece of this and examine it. We're not saying rewrite the entire ATMP. In fact, I'm really scared at the prospect of having to re-examine the entire ATMP, as my colleague put it, at the altar of River Oaks East, because frankly, we're looking at one small section. To try and throw open the doors to change everything with the ATMP, I think is wrong-minded. So essentially, I can't agree with the amendment based on the fact that I don't want to change the entire ATMP. I want to take a look at this one unique situation. And if in future anybody comes forward with any plan, with any idea that might make it better, that might show that it doesn't work properly, I think we have to acknowledge that, because these are living documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Khan.
Thank you. For the same reasons mentioned earlier by Councillor Grant and Councillor Knoll, I won't be supporting the interim suggestion made by Councillor Elgar. I appreciate his concern, but we do have a mechanism to deal with that. If between now and 2013 or 2014 there is some compelling evidence that comes forward that this is not working, we do have a motion for reconsideration. We can deal with it through that route. The other thing is, I'm satisfied by the comments. I chaired the CSC, and Mr. Cozy, who's not here today, said that he hasn't seen a removal of parking to this magnitude before, and he also reiterated that this will not be precedent setting. So I'm satisfied with those comments, and I'll be voting in favor of the main motion.
All right. All those in favor of the amendment proposed by Councillor Elgar and Councillor Demoff, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 to 6, I make it. The amendment fails. I will now put the amendment moved by Councillor Grant and Councillor Knoll to add the report on improving pedestrian safety to the committee motion. All those in favor?
That's the addendum part.
That's right, the amendment. The amendment that I know everybody agrees with. That carries. That's unanimous. I will now, I'll put the main motion in two pieces. The first piece will be the committee report. The second piece will be the amendment that we just approved to the main motion. And Councillor Demoff, you would like to speak to the main motion, as I understand it.
I would, because We passed an active transportation master plan. All of council passed that plan. All of council agreed with it. And I was quite surprised tonight to hear that the residents in this section of River Oaks had come to council in the past because they didn't have enough parking and asked for not to have bike paths put in the boulevard. So they got that one. Now they still don't have enough parking. And I'm sorry, was I mistaken on that?
Through you, Mayor Burton, that was a different group of residents. These were the residents that were west of the 6th line that had the parking, that wanted the parking.
Sorry. It just bothers me when we have a plan that a lot of thought was put into and we change it ad hoc because residents come out. And if you do pay any attention to how bike paths and bike lanes and signed bike routes work, you need a connected path, and we all agreed on the plan. I recognize these people have lost parking. They have very, very valid concerns about speeding. But the parking and the speeding are two different issues than whether we have bike lanes, whether we have an active transportation master plan. And that's something that we all take pride in. I hear many of my colleagues, I hear the mayor speak about our plans for bike lanes. And to change it now, it bothers me immensely when you go through and you read about what we said in when it was passed in 2009 and when it came back. We're confusing the issue and talking about speeding and traffic calming. But it's a step backwards for the town, and I spoke at CSC. I'm not going to get into all of the issues, but it would be a very sad day when we start taking out bike lanes after we've put them in.
Let's start a speakers list. I've got Councillor Grant, Councillor Khan. Anyone else? Councillor Grant.
Actually, as the mover, I'd like to get the last kick at the cat, if that's okay.
All righty then. That means it's Councillor Khan.
I agree with Councillor Demoff that we do have a policy in place and a plan that we all voted for, but we're not perfect. And this is why we have these types of meetings, so that going along, we can come back and listen to what the residents have to say, what input they have to get, and hopefully we can move to a proper direction collectively. And, you know, I've been accused in the past of bringing a motion, my own motion, that I voted against because someone has a better motion. I don't consider that a fault. I consider that us listening to what the public has to say. And I think the public has spoken very clearly today.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll.
Well, that's just great. Max took my entire speech.
You were never that
Well, then we're further along, then, aren't we?
So I'm going to say ditto, and but also just state that you know, just to reiterate what was I think said by my ward colleague a moment ago, that whether it's the TMP or any other plan that we establish, they can't be so rigid that we can't take into account local conditions. We heard very clearly cogent and reasoned arguments on the part of the residents. I know it kept getting pushed back to the issue of, oh, it's all about speeding, it's all about speeding. It's not just about speeding. It's about speeding, it's about parking, it's about community way of life. And I think that we need to be very clear that, you know, the TMP is a wonderful document, and we're all very excited, and I still have full support, I have full confidence that the plan is the right plan for the town of Oakville. But at the same time, there will be conditions that will come up all along the way with everything we do, where we have to take into account the desires of the local community, as well as the physical conditions and new information. And that's really all we're doing tonight. So we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're not reconsidering the transportation master plan. We're simply being reactive to the needs of the residents, the needs of the specific physical environment, as well as the conditions of that particular neighborhood. And I'm very pleased with that as a resolution.
Councillor Elgar.
Yeah, I appreciate where everybody's coming from. But I remember a few years ago where a councillor said, because I think we're really just hearing from one side at the end of the day. And that had to do with the skateboard park, and this is a totally different issue, but very similar, and I hope that councillor remembers those comments. Thank you.
That's a burn, I think. A well-delivered burn. All right. I think we've exhausted the topic. And I will put the, oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Grant.
Thank you. I thought the cat had wandered over to my yard. So the last kick at it. Basically, this has been very, very difficult for me in a sense that if this didn't tick off a number of boxes for me, I'd be shoulder to shoulder with Councillor Demoff and many of the people cycling in Oakville. I'm a member of the Regional Active Transportation Advisory Committee. I believe in the Active Transportation Master Plan. That's why I was scared with the whole idea about the side motion of opening up again to take a look at how it works everywhere else. It works in a general sense, but it doesn't work sometimes in specifics, and that's the problem with a master plan. You have to look at specific cases, and I'm very concerned that the pursuit of any ideal, no matter how honorable and great it is, cannot be blind to the real world safety concerns, and in this case, the real world concerns of 80 residents on a stretch of street. We've heard that this is not precedent setting. We've heard that this is not going to ruin anything. I think that really all we need to do in this case is option C, and then step back, take a breath, and see how we can make this work. But we can't push this on the people in the area, and we can't rush it. We need to consider it, and I think our best decisions are made when we think things over. And certainly, I'd like to think that I've seen this from all points of view, because again, wearing the two hats of being somebody who's interested in active transportation and being the representative of a group of people who've brought a very legitimate concern to me, I'm looking at it from both sides, and I'm thinking that option C is the best of both worlds in a sense. I mean, it's the best of both worlds in a compromised world. You get a little bit of cycling, you get a little bit of parking, nobody really gets what they want, but at the end of the day, everybody gets a little piece of the pie until we get an opportunity, again, to take a breath, look back, and see how we can make this work. So I'm going to once again reiterate that option C is really the only way that we can go in this case to make sure that we pursue the goals of a livable Oakville. Thank you.
All right, I'll put the vote of the, and there'll be a recorded vote. You'll rise to be recognized for the motion as amended, and we'll see if we need to separate it later. We'll have a procedural way to deal with it if the main motion fails. But for now, we're voting on the entire thing on the advice of the clerk, which I do agree with. So in favor of the motion as amended, please rise to be named. Councillor Khan, Councillor Adams, Councillor Grant, Councillor Knoll, Mayor Burton, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Bird, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Johnston. To vote against, please rise to be named. Councillor Lapworth, Councillor Elgar, Councillor Demoff, and Councillor Duddick. The motion carries as amended. There's no need for a separation, and we're done that one. And now we can turn to administrative services. Item 6, OTMH, and item 7, audit. Councillor Duddick, Councillor Elgar?
Item 6.
Item 6?
Yes, Your Worship. On item 6, I think everybody knows what our bylaw is related to noise, and I would first ask that we deny the motion approved by the committee, which was to go from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. I think we know why we have a 7 to 7 bylaw in place, and I would hope everybody would approve denying the committee recommendation. And then I have an alternate motion.
Okay, so Councillor Elgar, you're asking us to defeat item number 6? Yes. And so I need a mover and seconder for that in order to get it on the floor, don't I?
No, 6 is on, oh yeah, to get the approval on, sorry.
So you're entitled to move it and vote against it, and so are you, Councillor Lapworth. Thank you. That's Elgar and Lapworth. So is there discussion of this item? All in favor of the motion? So, Councillor Knoll?
Is it possible to find out what the alternative motion is?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would ask that we abide by the town's bylaw, that is it, yes. 7 to 7.
I thought there was some grand plan.
No, not at this point, no. We'll see what we can work up. But.
So, Councillor Elgar, to get your desired outcome, it seems to me you don't have to do anything except kill the motion.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So there isn't necessarily a promise of an additional motion.
Okay. I was just going that we have the town's bylaw, is what I want, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Well, we have that.
We have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
All right.
Move receipt of the original report.
All right. So we have a motion to move receipt of the original report and to kill the recommendation to give the dispensation.
Yes.
Everybody's clear? I beg your pardon?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, so I think, let's do it this way. The motion before us is the motion from committee, and we're going to separate that into receipt, no?
Mr. Mayor, if I could help, I believe the intent is the motion before committee is on the floor. If that motion is voted down or voted against by a majority, then the alternative motion would be to receive the report, the original report that was presented to ASC.
Excellent. I completely agree with that. So Councillor Elgar and Councillor Lapworth have moved item 6, and they ask you to defeat it. And if it is defeated, they'll move receipt of the report, and that will result in no dispensation being given, and the status quo of our noise bylaw will persist, will obtain. Everybody good with that? Anyone in favor of the motion?
Of my motion?
Of your motion to approve. So it's a little tricky. You've moved approval, and you wish everybody to vote against it. Will anyone vote in favor of the motion? Anyone against? That motion fails. Councillor Elgar, do you have a motion to receive?
Yes, I do. Motion to receive the report.
Councillor Lapworth, do you second that? Yes, I do. Thank you. Will anyone vote in favor of that motion? That carries. Now, Councillor Adams, item number 7, the choice of auditor.
I wish to vote against the recommendation of the committee, in as much as I'd prefer to see us extend it for 1 additional year and then go to an RFP. In my belief, it's an opportunity for us to ensure that we have a new auditor to provide us new advice.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
I don't believe I have a motion to approve this at this point in time.
Okay, so we're gonna repeat the same thing. We need a motion and a second for item 7. That can come from anyone. Councillor Duddick and Councillor Johnston. This will afford you the... Pardon? Well, then please ask a question instead. I mistook you for providing the motion.
My question is of Councillor Adams. When you're talking RFP, you're just saying to give another opportunity to revisit, like the way you worded it, meaning we're going with somebody else.
No, I mean it would be open as a normal RFP would be open. I have no problem with our current firm. I'm
more for the process than you are who's identified.
That's right. I believe it's appropriate for us to more frequently offer this for open tender.
All right. So we need a mover and seconder. Councillor Byrd, are you moving it?
I think this one should be sent back if we're going to. Clearly, I think this is contrary to the recommendation of staff. I understand we wanted to do this earlier. The proposal we have is to extend it. They've given us, I believe, and would have to ask them, they weren't at the committee, they've given us a price understanding going forward for future years under the understanding that this would be for a 5-year contract. Then it would open up. Now, what I understand that you're being consistent. No question. You brought this up at the ASC, and I think the recommendation of staff explained it to me. But they're going to go through the process. It's about 1.5 years, if I remember correctly, to go out again, which is what they wanted to do. This is how KPMG got here in the first place, because we went to a proposal from Deloitte at that point in time, and we want to do that. That's the way we do business. But there was some reason that we got this price because we weren't doing that, and that there was this understanding of a fixed price for the continuing 5 years. So, and the staff were going to undertake that, I believe, start the process in 2015 to go out again. The firm also that we've got here, some of the reasons they got it here are exactly the same reasons we chose them as the auditor at the region was their experience. I believe they have the lion's share of municipal business. So I don't expect we're going to change much, but I do like what you're trying to do. But the staff suggested that we go with the 5 years, do it 2015, with the proviso that these people are under the understanding that they've fixed their price for the next 5 years, and we're not going to honor our part of the commitment.
All right then. Councillor Demoff.
I wonder if Councillor Adams could maybe speak to it and convince me as to why the 1 year is better than 5.
I tell you what, before we have any discussion, we really need a motion. So I need a mover and a seconder for item 7.
Well, I'll move it as the staff recommendation and as what came out of the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Byrd, for moving item number 7. Now a seconder. Councillor Johnston, thank you so much. All right, now we can debate this. Councillor Adams, Councillor Demoff asked you for additional explanation.
The reason for the 1 year and not immediate is that we're already in a position where we don't have time to issue an RFP right now, hence the 1 year. So we could, even if we wanted to, we're not in a position to do an RFP for the current year.
Because there's not enough time.
There's not enough time. That's why we're not. That's why I'm suggesting a 1 year, not a 5 year.
And there's
a 1 year, not a 0.
Okay, so there's not enough time to issue an RFP immediately. So the arrangement with KPMG needs to continue for at least another year in the councillor's opinion. I would add that it might not be wise to try to extend a contract for 1 year, given that we don't have an offer from them for 1 year. We have an offer for 5. And that's why I believe Councillor Byrd suggested that if we weren't going to adopt the recommendation of the committee, that we should refer it back, because we don't have enough to work with here to make a decision beyond the committee's recommendation. And none of that will be necessary if item 7 passes. And so that's the first hurdle. And so in the interest of your time, how would you like it if I put the vote on item 7, and if it fails, then we can decide what we're going to do? Councillor Demoff.
We could refer it back to ASC, is that what you're saying?
Councillor Byrd was suggesting that in the circumstances that we don't have a 1 year offer, we ought to refer it back to ASC and staff to come up with a 1 year offer, or a 2 year offer, I suspect. Councillor Adams?
It was suggested to the committee that the pricing of the that's provided to us would be good for the 1 year.
Oh, all right.
But Councillor Byrd is quite right. We probably should double check.
Okay.
So I'll give you a motion to refer it back to ASC then.
Okay.
Looking for? Because if we vote it down, we can't do that.
That's right. So that takes precedent. We need a seconder for the motion to refer. Councillor Adams seconds the motion. Any other discussion of that? All right. All in favor of referral? 1, 2, 3. All against referral? Referral fails. We have a main motion, which is moved by Councillor Byrd, seconded by Councillor Johnston, to adopt the committee report. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. That brings us to the motion to lift from the table the Administrative Services Committee recommendation that the plan for Phase 1 renovations to Town Hall be received, that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute the lease agreement with Oakville Hydro for approximately 5,758 square feet of office space, and that the proposed renovations to the council chamber be deferred to Phase 2. I need a mover and seconder for this. Councillor Johnston moves. Councillor Adams seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That carries. We have no consent items, and with that, we now come to the first agenda item for the main part of the meeting. and that would be the Oakville Hydro Quarterly Report. And we are fortunate to receive a presentation from the President and Chief Executive Officer of Oakville Hydro Corporation for the quarterly report. Welcome, Mr. Lister.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm pleased to provide an update to council this evening on Oakville Hydro. In the audience today, I have two members of the board, Mr. Gary Burkett, chair of the board, and Mr. How can I forget your name? I'm sorry. David Brennan, who's chair of our Governance and Risk Committee, and also I have members of management and staff with me here tonight. Jim Collins, Julie Millington, Mike Brown, Scott Moody, Vivek Radwarishkin, and Bill Harvey. I would like to start off this evening's presentation, though, just bear with me.
We have technical help standing by. All right, that proves you really do energize us.
Where's my... Right here.
Mayor.
Oh, right there. There?
No, right side. No.
There. Okay, thank you very much. So, at the United Way Oakville 2012 campaign kickoff in September, the wholly owned subsidiary of the town of Oakville won the bus pull challenge. Our time was 18.67 seconds, winning with a margin of 0.3 seconds. We're pleased to be able to represent the shareholder so successfully and look forward to a repeat win next year. Oakville Hydro is doing very well, and we have a prosperous and exciting future ahead. The partnerships and collaboration we continue to develop with the town are increasing our effectiveness, profitability, and brand in the industry. We are leveraging the impressive brand the town of Oakville has in the province. As I've presented to council previously, our strategic plan sets our direction and focus to serve our customers well and increase their value to the shareholder. Our vision, we energize you. Our mission, we provide your best energy and conservation solutions. Our priorities and focus are balanced among our four strategic imperatives: profit, service, people, and community. These imperatives are servicing us well and fulfilling our regulated responsibilities, serving our customers, and growing the business. While some of our peers are facing slow or negative business growth, Oakville Hydro, through its local distribution company and energy-related businesses, is on a course to significant prosperity. A recent discussion with the Ontario Power Authority staff revealed that they consider North Oakville to be one of Ontario's significant growth areas of power consumption. Over the last year, we've aligned a number of our operations and expanded to new lines of business. We operate under a number of brands, with Oakville Hydro as the background stronghold. I'll speak further to the Grid Smart City logo later in the presentation. Our main business, providing safe and reliable electricity to the residents and businesses of Oakville, is Oakville Hydro Electricity Distribution, Inc. The company is regulated by the Ontario Energy Board. Oakville Hydro Energy Services, Sandpiper Home Comfort, Golden Horseshoe Metering Systems, and Sandpiper Generation provide an array of energy-related services and product, as well as investing in green energy generation projects. Elcon, which you see in our streets, is an expanding utility construction company providing excavation services as well as new capabilities for low-voltage overhead and telecom infrastructure services. I'd like to highlight some of our notable achievements. We're very pleased to have won the Engineering Project of the Year from the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers for our Glenorchy Transformer Station. The station went into service in July 2011, just days before a peak loading period, and now provides power to about 8,000 homes and businesses in North Oakville. Further recognition has been received through our ongoing safety focus. Oakville Hydro's Staying Alive safety program has won a Pinnacle Award from the Canadian Public Relations Society. One of the judges was quoted as saying, "I've been practicing for 40 years, and this was the best workplace safety campaign that I've ever seen. The strategies were spot on, and I thought the graphics reinforced all of the messages and communications objectives." We're very proud of this recognition, and it is a testament to the priority and leadership at Oakville Hydro on the safety of our employees, their families, and the community. In addition, last year, Elcon Construction was named Electric Excavator of the Year by the Ontario Regional Common Ground Alliance. Elcon won the award for having the lowest record in the province for electrical plant contacts. The Ontario Regional Common Ground Alliance represents more than 400 organizations dedicated to ensuring public safety, environmental protection, and the integrity of underground infrastructure through the promotion of effective damage prevention practices. Again, we are honored to receive this recognition. This slide illustrates the town's kilowatt-hour consumption, comparing 2011 to 2012. Year to year, the monthly amount of energy consumed tracks closely, with variations predominantly being weather-driven. Our revenues for the distribution company are directly linked to the amount of electricity delivered, and for this year are tracking as anticipated. We had a successful time-of-use electricity rate implementation and worked through customer concerns. Customers have adjusted well to the new rate structure and certainly have become more energy conscious. The Ontario Energy Board adjusts time-of-use rates every 6 months, the next one going into effect on November 1st. Oakville Hydro has no influence over the time-of-use rates for the electricity commodity and collects revenues on behalf of the province. On April 16th of this year, just before a town council meeting, high winds ripped through Oakville. Around 5:30 p.m., this century-old tree fell across Morriston Road, taking with it high-voltage power lines and poles. On the right of the screen, you see the town's forestry crews working with hydro crews to remove the fallen tree. I show this slide to illustrate the excellent coordination between the town and hydro crews, as well as a type of urgent safety and power restoration incidents that we respond to. The design of the distribution system allowed us to limit the number of customers impacted, with 400 initially affected, and at 10 p.m., all but 50 customers had their power restored, and at 4:20 a.m., all customers had power. Within 11 hours, we had the tree removed, replaced the poles that had fallen, restrung the lines, and had the power back on. Oakville's distribution plant is one of the most robust and advanced systems in Ontario and well designed to accommodate new and changing loads. Our distribution plant and staff operating it continue to provide very reliable service. We recorded excellent service continuity results in 2011 with a ranking of 3rd across Canada for the Index of Reliability for participating Canadian Electricity Association utilities. We have one of the most pervasive automated distribution systems in Ontario. And currently we are proceeding with the Smart Grid pilot project to monitor power flow and detect losses as part of the Ministry of Energy's Smart Grid program. We're the only utility in Ontario to pilot this particular technology in conjunction with the Ministry's program. We all experience momentary interruptions from time to time. These interruptions are caused by small animals like squirrels and raccoons, tree branches, and lightning. We've had fewer of these types of interruptions this year. However, we continue to focus on vegetation management as tree contacts are causing more extended outages. We also have had an increase in the number of underground cable faults. As this part of the distribution ages, it is more susceptible to failure. We are increasing the priority of the underground distribution plant to manage and address the outages and on target renewal investments. As you're aware, Oakville Hydro is in the community supporting the town and expanding our corporate citizenship. It is one of our strategic imperatives and enhances the contributions we're able to make to the communities we serve and the engagement of our employees on a daily and in the daily lives of our customers, their families, and Oakville's businesses. We are in the schools, partnering with safety champion Rob Ellis of the Youth at Work Foundation, active with the Chamber of Commerce, town events, United Way, the Terry Fox Run, the Santa Claus Parade, to name a few. We're very fortunate to have such a supporting shareholder and are proud and advantaged to be able to stand beside the town in the community and in industry. We are delivering the Ontario Power Authority conservation and management programs as we work towards the 4-year peak load reduction in energy consumption targets set by the province. The province's goal is to remove the equivalent of 2.4 million homes from the grid by the year 2030 through reducing the load by 7,100 megawatts and 28 terawatt hours. You see Oakville Hydro in the community with our refrigerator roundup, peak saver, and heating and cooling incentives and coupon programs, as well as business lighting and retrofit programs. We've had a good response from the community and are optimistic that Oakville will become a leading energy-conscious town. Oakville Hydro is part of the Grid Smart City initiative founded by Burlington Hydro. Through its 10 members, all mid-sized local distribution companies, we represent over 500,000 customers, or about 12% of the province. We're very active in exploring opportunities for shared business activities to reduce costs and improve effectiveness and capabilities, as well as developing the smart grid, researching the impacts of electric vehicles, and broader energy planning. This group of 10 local distribution companies works well together and have very aligned interests. Oakville Hydro is well served by being part of this initiative, and I'm looking forward to the progress and innovation we can achieve. I would like to speak to our energy growth businesses. Oakville Hydro has embarked on a journey to develop a group of companies that will provide long-term, sustainable cash flows to our shareholder. We have developed a comprehensive strategy based on 3 distinct business units: power generation, utility construction services, and energy services. Through these business units, we are creating shareholder value by growing the existing businesses, developing and investing in new energy projects, and through strategic acquisitions. Power generation is focused on developing and acquiring solar generating assets, generating renewable electricity through biogas technology, investigating commercial viability of biofuels, and building community-based district energy facilities. Our utility services business, Elcon, is focused on added value services to existing markets by adding the skills and technicians to provide asset inspection services, hydro excavation solutions, and overhead telecommunications and streetlight maintenance services. Our most active portfolio at the moment is Sandpiper Energy Solutions. Through its home comfort bundles, Sandpiper now offers heating, ventilation, air conditioning products, worry-free protection plans, in addition to its rental, tank, and tankless water heater solutions. In the last year, we have acquired the water heater portfolios of Hamilton, St. Catharines, Halton Hills, Norfolk Energy, and Brant County. Through the new Sandpiper Home Comfort brand, we have over 20,000 rental hot water tank, water softener, and HVAC customers. I'm confident that our comprehensive growth strategy, driven by an energized team of energy experts, will deliver sustainable, long-term financial returns for the town. Here are some of the marketing materials that we're using for the Sandpiper Home Comfort brand. The brand is being well received, and we currently have a campaign on the Oakville bus shelters. I encourage you to check out the Sandpiper website for more information on this growing business, and please sign up. We continue to pursue green energy projects, green energy opportunities, and I'm very pleased to report we have concluded negotiations on the acquisition of a project to build a 10-megawatt solar farm in Prince Edward County. As this project develops through the planning stages, I will provide more details. We also have an acquisition of a small run-of-the-river hydropower project on Manitoulin Island that we're hoping to finalize early in the new year. The 260 solar panels on the town roof have been producing electricity since June. It's a 60 kilowatt system and will be receiving the 71 cents per kilowatt hour for 20 years. It is a great showpiece for the town. We also have applications in with the Ontario Power Authority to pursue solar installations on a number of other town facilities in Oakville. We're very well positioned to grow our businesses, and this growth could not happen without the assistance of the town and the strategic approaches we develop with the town in pursuing these opportunities. It is an excellent business model, and together we will jointly enjoy continued success. As CEO of Oakville Hydro Corporation, I'm appreciative and proud to be able to lead Oakville Hydro and with the town of Oakville, building a great organization. Oakville Hydro is the jewel of the town and is a partner in helping Oakville become the most livable town in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Your question, Councillor Khan and Councillor Elgar.
Thank you very much for the report. I want to first of all say that I want to thank you because we do have occasionally residents who call who have different concerns or questions about Oakville Hydro, and when we do refer them to your office and to your staff, they have always been professional and respond very expeditiously. So thank you very much for that. Oakville Hydro has a very unique business model. On the one hand, you promote conservation. Okay, that undoubtedly affects your bottom line, your revenue. So is it fair to say that the subsidiary businesses like Elcon and the other businesses that you mentioned are taking up a greater percentage of the total revenue that Oakville Hydro brings in?
Not yet. The regulated company, Oakville Hydro Electric Distribution, is the main revenue generator, and but as we develop our unregulated businesses, we anticipate that the maybe not the revenues, but the net incomes will increase substantially relative to the regulated company.
Just one other question. This has to do about the downtime. I remember you used to show us graphs about how much downtime we've had in this particular year. How is our standing in that area?
In terms of power outages, you mean? The one statistic that I provided, and I think this is something to be very proud of, is Oakville Hydro stands third in Canada for index of reliability. We were beat out by NMAX and Medicine Hat, and that includes a fair number of Ontario utilities also. So we are doing very well on reliability.
All right. I'm Councillor Elgar and then Councillor Knoll.
Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for bringing the board with you. It was a bit longer council meeting than normal, but it was interesting. With regard to the FIT and the microfit program, how many people in Oakville are part of that now themselves? Because you would be putting the meters in for them, and you would know the calibration, I would think, of what, how big it is, and how is it going a large number year over year, or is it really just very small?
A very low uptake in Oakville for the microfit and fit programs, and I don't have the numbers offhand. Mike, do you? I don't have them offhand, I had them for the last presentation, but it's not very many. Relative to other communities, very few microfit and just a handful of fit. So very low uptake in Oakville. Part of the reason is half of Oakville is constrained in terms of 2 of our transformer stations are not able to take microfit or fit system until situations rectified by Hydro One. That's a contributor, but not, I wouldn't say a big contributor.
As we develop in North Oakville, north of Dundas, is there anything like Oakville Hydro could do to promote it? I think with the developers who are building the houses, like is there any action on that part by Oakville Hydro with the development industry to do something?
We could. We're not out there actively promoting distributed generation, really leaving it up to the province, but we certainly have all the processes in place to accommodate distributed generation as a condition of our license with the Ontario Energy Board. But we could do more promotion of it to encourage it in the North Oakville area.
Thank you very much, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Before we move on, just to clarify, those 2 impaired transformer stations, who owns those?
Those are Hydro One stations.
Who?
Hydro One.
So that's not us.
Correct. The Glenorchy station is well equipped to handle distributed generation.
And who built Glenorchy?
Oakville Hydro, Electricity Distribution, Inc.
Isn't Oakville Hydro great?
Yeah, it certainly is, yes.
Councillor Knoll.
Better shareholder, though, yes.
I don't know if those were really questions or not, Your Worship. I don't really have, I don't actually have a question either. I do have a comment, very similar to what Councillor Khan said, but I've had reason to be in touch with your customer service for a number of constituent and some people in some other wards that have come to me for assistance from time to time. And I just want to tell you that Enzo Agameri and his customer service team are by far probably the best customer service team in Oakville. They are awesome. and their responsiveness and their willingness to work with customers, particularly customers that have troubles from time to time. They're amazing, and you should be very proud of that particular segment of your business. I know all this other stuff is really exciting, the solar panels and the generation, everything, but your customer service is where the rubber meets the road, and they're fantastic. So congratulations, and thanks again for another good report.
Well, thank you for that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Your Worship. A number of years ago, you installed solar panels on a roof elsewhere in this town. I'm trying to remember where it was. I'm trying to remember if they're still effective.
Councillor Bird, no?
Councillor Robinson, on the Hydro Building headquarters.
That's what I thought.
Oh, okay, yes. That one I know of.
Now,
yes.
are they still there?
Yes, yeah, functioning.
Are they
and,
still
providing
are
electricity?
they still feeding into the grid?
Yes, still feeding into
So,
the grid.
How many places other than the Oakville headquarters, the Hydro headquarters and Town Hall, are we feeding the grid?
Those are the only two locations that Oakville Hydro is involved with.
So when you mentioned the Town Hall one, why didn't you mention the Hydro office?
Oh, just the town was new, and it's just been up and running since June.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Your Worship, I have another comment I'd like to make. This seems to be an appropriate time to
You
do it,
have the floor.
in addition to asking questions. And I would just like to point out that over the past number of months, Alan and I have had situations with a group of residents in Oakville who from time to time become bothered with what they believe to be extracurricular activity with the Elcon staging building, the yards that they have on Spears Road. And I got to tell you, councillors, that this Elcon organization, as Councillor Noel just alluded to, are the most professional and the most helpful and the most willing. They'll come out there anytime the neighbors ask them to, talk about the problems, and make every attempt that they can to fix them, and they almost always do make everybody completely happy. And I've looked forward to this opportunity to make these comments for some time.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Lister, again, thanks for the great service, although the next time a tree comes down on Morrison, I don't need the 1, 2, 3 a.m. updates by phone. Just, I trust you for that one. Had a number of emails and phone calls lately in terms of number of people concerned with the smart meters. And just wondering if you or one of your team could talk about some of the concerns that they consume a huge amount of energy, that they emit strong bursts of microwave radiation, that they're setting fires across the U.S., and that they are an invasion of people's property. I don't know whether, I'm sure you've heard those before. If you or one of your team could address that, it would be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to it. In the jurisdictions in Canada, United States, where smart meters have been installed, there is some of the public have pushed back with health concerns and privacy issues. There was the story about a smart meter causing a fire that's been circulating on the web. So as far as the fire is concerned, there is no reason to believe that smart meters would cause fire. Meter bases can cause fires, and that can happen from time to time, whether that's a smart meter or a regular meter. The health issues, the smart meters emit a very, very low amount of radio frequency energy. In Oakville, the system that we have, it operates at the 900 megahertz level, which is the same as a garage door opener. So when you're using a garage door opener, you're emitting the same type of frequency that our smart meter sends out. Our smart meters in Oakville transmit 4 times a day, and the duration added up over the 4 times is less than 2 seconds. So it's less than 2 seconds a day that there's actually energy being transmitted from a smart meter in an Oakville residence. The levels of the radio frequency energy also are well below the Health Canada guidelines, and the Government of Ontario requires us to operate below the Health Canada guidelines. So so we've complied with that and put a system in place that meets the regulations. And so there are some residents that do have concerns, and I'm unaware of, there's lots of literature on the potential health effects, but there's also lots of literature that suggests there are not health effects, and so there's no definitive answer to that particular question. In terms of the privacy, the Oakville Hydro smart meters are the most encrypted smart meters in the province. We did have a privacy issue when they first rolled out, and so we have actually had the supplier put on I'll call it an advanced encryption technology, so that there is no way that the actual smart meter data can be extracted by a third party. And the type of information that we're pulling off the smart meter is no different than the information that we had previously pulled. Okay.
Thank you very much for those questions, Councillor Giddings. I think it's very helpful to get that information out to the public, and appreciate that initiative. If there's no other questions, I'll look for a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation. Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Adams. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Lister, and everyone from Oakville Hydro for all you do for us. We appreciate it. I believe that Council, what is your pleasure on our remaining two items? Do you need discussion and debate about them, or shall I just put them to you? Yes. All right. On item 2, there being no discussion, I need a mover and seconder. Councillor Johnston moves. Councillor Byrd seconds. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item C1, I need a mover. Councillor Byrd, seconded by Councillor Dudek. All those in favor? Opposed? That too is carried. Now, let me see what I can say. All right. The recommendation passed by Council in confidential item C1 will be made public as part of the minutes of this meeting and through a public announcement this week. If you stay tuned, you'll see that no doubt in the media. You have your information items. You have your status of outstanding issues, and that brings us to new business. And boy, do we have new business. First, we have a motion, a notice of motion, in accordance with Section 6.12 of the Procedure Bylaw, for a motion to be considered at the next council meeting on October 29th, and this is the long-term infrastructure plan campaign of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. This is moved by Councillor Johnston and seconded by Councillor Robinson. I don't think there's any need to do anything with that, right? That brings us then, word has reached me, Councillor Giddings, that you might have a new business item.
I do, and I'm going to make use of the long mic.
You're a brave man.
Now I probably have to move this over this way a bit. There we go. I realize that it's getting close to the end of the meeting. However, I just wanted to give some advance notice regarding the Random Act of Kindness Day. Last year on November 4th, Oakville celebrated Random Act of Kindness Day, a day earmarked by the Oakville Community Foundation to recognize kindness and humanity in the town of Oakville. Over 60 organizations, as well as countless individuals, were involved in the day. The reason for doing this is simple: to increase the spirit of volunteerism in Oakville and to celebrate and encourage increasing numbers of people engaging in helpful and meaningful work in their community. Random Act of Kindness Day is designed to raise community spirit by spontaneously offering a good turn for someone, just because it's a kind and a fun thing to do. The Random Act of Kindness can be as simple and no cost, whether it be taking out your neighbor's garbage or returning their garbage pails. It can be modest by buying treats for the office or your council colleagues. And then there's the ripple effect.
Imagine if this idea took hold in our community such that people did it more and more. What kind of community would we be developing then? I've asked by a number of people why we should participate, and the answer is simple. It's fun to do small kindnesses while participating in a big event. You will feel good, and so will the recipient. Another good reason is to increase the spirit of volunteerism in Oakville. Imagine an Oakville with increasing numbers of people engaging in helpful and meaningful acts of kindness. The result, resilient and strong communities. Last year, our community celebrated Random Act of Kindness Day for the first time. It was a wonderful celebration of good things for good people. School children wrote notes of thanks. Others shared home baking. Schools held a cleanup of their school grounds or a local park. Commuters prepaid a coffee for the person behind them in line. I experienced a person putting change in expired parking meters in downtown Oakville so that the drivers would not receive a parking ticket. A group of Scout Canada venturers from 4th Trafalgar raked all of George's Square as their random act of kindness, as well as to clean up for Remembrance Day ceremonies. The clearing of the area around the cenotaph led to a warming discussion of the appreciation and thanks that was felt for the sacrifices made by members of our armed forces, many of whom were about the same age as the Scouts when they made the ultimate sacrifice. Oakville is a great place to live and work, and at the same time, every year the needs in our community increase. Through random acts of kindness, we're able to think about, talk about, and practice the sort of community we want to build. Participating in random acts of kindness will allow us to reach others with whom we wouldn't ordinarily interact. We can take actions to make things better and to share some kindness. November 9th is Oakville's second Random Act of Kindness Day. I invite all of you to participate. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings, and thank you very much for the raking. All right. We also, I believe, have something from Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, this is the Random Act of Kindness was a great segue for my announcement. Kerr Street Ministry provides food for the working poor. It provides meals for the homeless. And on days that it's closed, for example, on Sundays, it provides soup drops. But unfortunately, there is an ever-increasing demand, and I have been asked to kindly encourage my fellow councillors to fill these bags up by themselves or their constituents and return them back to Kerr Street Ministries, and I will gladly pick them up if you don't have the time or the luxury of dropping these off. If I can pass these along, I'll take this. You can pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Khan. Are there any regional reports or questions regarding town boards and advisory committees? Are there any requests for reports? I understand we have one here from Councillor Dudek and Councillor Demoff.
Yes.
I believe it's on your desk, councillors. Councillor Dudek, would you like to introduce this item?
Given the hour, I'll be brief. Councillor Demoff and myself attended a property in our ward recently where there was a recent demolition, and it brought home the importance of notification and sharing of information with the immediate stakeholders. In other words, the immediate neighbors. And in some cases, they didn't know when the demolition was going to take place or if it was going to take place. They had small children. There was considerable dust and debris that went over. And so from safety reasons, as well as notification in the event that there's a problem, providing contact numbers prior to a demolition is often important. So in speaking to staff, they recommended that we request a report to come back to council on options to address the concerns we raised.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. I think that's a valuable service. I commend you for it, and your partner, Councillor Demoff. Is there any other discussion, or shall I call the vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now, let us see. Right. A mover and seconder for bylaw 2012-100, the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting of council, please. Councillor Grant and Councillor Lapworth, thank you very much, guys. All those in favor? Opposed? The bylaw is adopted. That completes the agenda. Thank you for your time and attention. It's been great working with you.